Anita. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making some Halloween themed earrings. We're going to be making some pumpkins. So get ready for Halloween. I'll be using some beads from my stash. These earrings are made using 11/0 Delica beads. These are the cylinder shaped beads. And I just picked these up at Hobby Lobby. You can get these anywhere, but I've got a bright orange, shiny opaque black, and a shade of green, and some very light yellow. You can use any color, or if you don't have yellow, you can use gold. So if you click more in the bottom of this video, you'll get all the details, including a link to my website, and you'll see some for sale there as well. I'm also using a stop bead today, a couple of lever back earring findings, or you can use ear wire hooks. I'm also using Wire Guardians, size 12 beading needle, and I've got 6-pound Fireline for today. And you're going to need about 4 yards total, 2 yards for each earring. And I'll have all the details and the counts and measurements that you need in the description box. All right, so let me get my area cleared and we'll get started. All right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to thread your needle with about, 1.5 yards of your 6-pound Fireline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stop bead on. So we're going to pick up a stop bead just to get us started. And I want to bring that about halfway down. So I'm just going to eyeball this. And once I've got my stop bead halfway down, I'm going to bring my needle back through the hole where my tail thread is coming, just to anchor this stop bead, just to get me started. Like that. So that'll just keep our beads from falling off. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by doing a ladder stitch with our Delicas. And in order to have this video not be quite so long, I'll be doing a fast forward later on after I've got the steps explained to you on how to do the stitch, because after we've done the ladder stitch for the first row, we'll be doing a brick stitch going forward to do the whole earring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the middle of the earring, work our way up, and then we'll turn around and come back down and do the other half. So here's a sneak peek of what we're making today. This cute little guy, looks like he's a smiling pumpkin. Anyway, so we're going to be starting about halfway. We're going to be working up this direction. We're going to put on our Wire Guardian, our lever back finding, and then we're going to come back down to this side, and then we'll work on this bottom half. Super simple pair of earrings to make. You can do this, in a couple of hours or less, and very cute, very fun to make, and you don't need very much in materials. So as I'm explaining this, I will have the counts on the screen for each row. This is a total of about 18 or 19 rows total, not a very large pair of earrings. They're about an inch length in the length of about 1 inch long. They're not very long earrings. Okay, so we're going to start by picking up 2 of our orange Delicas. And I've got to start the first row. You're going to have 6 orange, 2 blacks, and 6 orange. That's for row 1. So you're picking up your first 2 beads. You're going to bring that down to near your stop bead. Then we're going to bring our needle back through the first bead that we put on, which is this guy right here. So just bring your needle through like that, pull. And you want those to stack next to each other, like that. All right, so I'm going to bring my thread back down because I want it exiting the last bead. So bring your thread or your needle back through so that you're coming down this direction. Now we're going to pick up another orange, and we're going to come down through the top, the opposite side of where our thread is. Pull your thread, and you want that to stack next to your bead like that. So we're going to keep adding these. Once I've added that bead, my thread's coming out of this second bead. I want to come up through the end bead like that. And pinch and hold your work as you're pulling like that. We're going to pick up another orange bead. Come through the opposite side of where your thread is. Pull. Now bring your needle down through the bead you just added, like that. So far I have 4 orange beads. I need 2 more. Pick up another one. Come through the opposite side of where your thread is. Pull that snug. Bring your needle up through the last bead you added. Pick up another orange. Same thing, go through the opposite side. Pull that snug so there's no gap. Bring your needle down through the last bead you added. Now we're going to pick up 2 black beads, and you're doing these one at a time for this row. So pick up a black bead, same thing, come through the opposite side. Then up the last bead you added. Pick up another black bead, do the same thing. Bring your needle down through that last bead. And it's going to look a little wonky, but it's all going to firm up once we start adding more beads. So go ahead and continue adding the next 6 orange beads until you get to the end, and then we'll go on to row 2. So here's what I have so far. I've got 6, 2, and I've got 1 more to add to the end. So I'm picking up my last orange bead, going through the opposite side. Pull that snug and bring my needle down through the last bead. All right, so here's what we have. I've got a total of 6 orange, 2 black in the center, and 6 orange. So now we're going to go on to row 2. Row 2 is 2 orange, 1 black, 2 yellow, 3 orange, 2 yellow, 1 black, and 2 orange. And I'll get those all laid out. All right, here's row 2 with my beads all picked out. As I mentioned, I got 2 orange, 1 black, 2 yellow, 3 orange, 2 yellow, 1 black, 2 orange. And we're going to flip this up so that our thread is exiting up here at the top, like this. Now starting from this direction, we're going to be doing brick stitch. And I'm going to start, when you start a new row of brick stitch, you're always picking up 2 beads. So our first 2 beads are the orange, and we're exiting this end bead here. So for this second row, we're going underneath the second thread bridge. So as you can see, these are our thread bridges in between each bead. So this is the first thread bridge. We're going under the second thread bridge. Right there. So you're going to kind of pinch and hold that between your fingers. Carefully pull it. And those beads are going to stack on top. So they're going to look a little funny until you get your needle back through. So we're going to go up, bring our needle back up through this last bead right here. Pull that up. And you pinch between your fingers and pull. Now we're exiting here. We're going to come down this end bead to reinforce. And you have to do that at the beginning of each row. And now we're going to go back up through the end bead right here. Pinch your fingers and pull, and that stacks them together nice and neat like that. So we're doing our next bead now. Going forward, you're picking up one bead at a time. So at the beginning of each row, you pick up 2 beads, but after that first stitch of the 2 beads at the beginning of the row, you pick up 1 bead at a time, doing brick stitch. So our next bead is the black bead. So we're going to go right underneath the very next thread bridge right here. Now bring your needle back up through the bead you just added. Like that. Try to get this to focus, and I'm having a challenge today with this camera, but hopefully you can follow along. All right, so there's the black bead. Now we've got 2 yellow beads coming next, so I'm picking up one at a time. Got my yellow bead, and I'm going to go underneath the next thread bridge. Right there. And it's a bit of a challenge when you're just starting these out. Your first 2 rows are usually the hardest, trying to hold it with your fingers and, you know, get coordinated. So we're pulling this down. Now I'm going to bring my needle back up through the yellow bead, like that. That's what that looks like. We're picking up the next yellow bead, going under the next thread bridge. Bring that needle back up through the yellow bead. Pinch your fingers as you pull, and then that stacks nice and neat. So our next sequence is we've got 3 orange beads, so we're picking up the first one, going under the next thread bridge. Now bring your needle back up through the bead you just added. Pick up another orange and repeat. Here's our third orange going under the next thread bridge. There we go. Now go back up that bead you added. Now we've got 2 yellow beads coming up, so we're picking up the first yellow bead, going under the next thread bridge. Then back up that bead. Now we're picking up the next yellow bead, going under the next thread bridge. Now back up that bead. Now we've got 1 black bead to add coming up, and we're going under the next thread bridge. Just hold that the best way you can. Bring your needle back through. And we've got 2 more to add. Pick up 1, go under the next thread bridge. And we're getting near the end here, so the next row will be a little easier. Takes a lot of patience when you're starting a brick stitch earring, because it's always the first few rows very awkward. So I've got my last orange bead here going under the last thread bridge. Now I'm going to bring my needle back through that orange bead, like that. Pinch and pull your thread. Pull that nice and snug. And this last bead may be a little wonky because your thread is kind of in between, but we're going to bring this down. So we're going to just let that dangle for a bit. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to take this stop bead off just to make it a little easier. So just pinch your work nice and firm and pull that stop bead off because we don't need it now. And now we're ready to start row 3. So I like to keep my work facing up, and the way I do brick stitch is I'm just going to go back and forth like this. So now we're going to do row 3 next. So let me get those beads lined up and we'll continue. All right, these are my beads for row 3. And for row 3 you need 3 orange, 1 black, 1 yellow, 4 orange, 1 yellow, 1 black, and 3 orange. And to start row 3, we're going under our first thread bridge. Now that last row we did, or the second row we did, we went under the second thread bridge to decrease. We're going to increase on this row, so we're going under the first thread bridge. So as I mentioned previously, you're going to pick up 2 beads to start your row for brick stitch. And you do that going forward. Always pick up 2 beads. Now the change on this row 3 is that instead of going under the second thread bridge, we're going under the first. So we're going to, our threads exiting that end bead here, we're going under the very first thread bridge right here. Now we're going back up this end bead and we're going to reinforce by coming down the outer bead and up the inner bead. So what that did is that staggered that bead to stick out a little bit. So we're going to continue picking up our beads one at a time now, doing brick stitch, going under the very next thread bridge. So I've got orange. So you go under the thread bridge, back up the bead you added, and continue adding your colors. Pick up the black, go under the next thread bridge, go back up the bead you added, and now you just continue adding these colors. They'll be up on the screen, and I'm going to fast forward going forward for each row. Alright, I'm coming to the end of row 3 and I have 2 beads left. So as you can see, I'm picking up 1 orange and I've got my last thread bridge here. So I'm going to go under that, going back up my end bead, and because this is an increase row, I need to pick up 1 more orange bead. And we're going to go under the same thread bridge that we've already been through to add that last bead. And then you want to bring your needle back up through that end bead and pull nice and snug. So that does the increase at the end, like that. So now we're going to go on to row 4. And let me get those beads laid out and we'll continue. All right, for row 4, you're going to need 3 orange, 1 black, 5 orange, 1 black, and 3 orange. And we're starting row 4 by going under the second thread bridge. So to start the row, I'll get you started and then I'll send you on your way. You're picking up 2 orange and we're going under the second thread bridge. There's 1, there's 2. Bring your needle up through the last bead you added. Remember, we have to reinforce when we're at the beginning of a row. Come down the outside bead, and then up the inside bead. Pull nice and snug, and continue adding the rest of your beads, 1 bead at a time, going under the next thread bridge. Alright, I'm coming down to the end of row 4. I've got my last orange going under the last thread bridge. Going back up that end bead, and that finishes row 4. And now we'll go on to row 5. Alright, for row 5, you're going to need a total of 12 orange. And we're exiting out of this end bead. Remember, to start your new row, you're picking up 2 beads and you're going under the second thread bridge for row 5. So there's 1 and there's 2. And we want to reinforce this. So we're going up through the last bead, down the outside, up the inside, pull that snug, and continue adding the remainder of your beads. I'm picking up my last orange bead for row 5. Going under the last thread bridge. And that completes row 5. So now we'll go on to row 6. All right, we're going on to row 6, and you need for row 6 5 orange, 1 green, and 5 orange. And we're going to start under the second thread bridge. So pick up your first 2 beads, exiting here, going under the second thread bridge. Reinforce, and continue adding your beads until we get to the end. I'm coming down to my last orange bead, going under the last thread bridge. And this will complete row 6. And now we'll prepare for row 7 next. All right. Before we start row 7, we're going to make one little jog here in our stitch. So our thread is coming out of this end bead here. What we need to do is we need to advance our needle so that our thread is exiting this second bead. So in order to do that, I'm just going to come down through this bead here, like that. And I'm going to come down this next bead here. And now I'm going to bring my needle through the bead right next to it and the bead on the diagonal, because that's where I want my needle coming out of the second bead from the end. So you want to do that before you start row 7. All right, so for row 7, you need 3 orange, 2 green, and 3 orange, and we'll be going under the second thread bridge from where our thread is exiting. So you're picking up your first 2 beads. Your thread is exiting here, so you're counting second thread bridge from where your thread is. So you're going 1, 2. Right there is the second thread bridge from where your thread is exiting. So go ahead and pull that down, and you want to reinforce just like we've done, going up through the bead you added, down the outer bead, and back up the inner bead. And pull that nice and snug, and that will straighten that out. And notice that when it's staggered in a couple of beads, and that's what we want. So now you're going to continue adding 1 bead at a time for the remainder beads until we get to the end. Coming down to my last orange bead, going under this very next thread bridge, back up this last bead, and that completes row 7. All right, before we start row 8, we're going to advance our needle so that we're going out of this third bead here from the end. So right now our thread is exiting right here. We want our thread coming out of this third bead right here. So we're just going to do a little advance. So I'm going to come down through this bead here and the one below it. It really doesn't matter what direction you take as long as you're exiting this third bead. So excuse me, I'm just going to come up through these beads here. So that's where I want my needle coming out of for row 8. For row 8, you need 3 green beads. Row 8 is a very easy row. So we're exiting right here. We're going to pick up 2 beads because that's the beginning of our row. And we're going under the second thread bridge from where our thread is exiting. So we're here. We're going under 1, 2 right here. And you're going to go up the last bead you added. We're reinforcing because this is the start of a row. Coming down the outer bead and up the inner bead. Pull that nice and snug. That's what you should have. So we've got 1 more green bead to pick up. Go under the next thread bridge. Back up. And that completes row 8. All right, now we're going to start row 9. Row 9 is 2 green beads. Very easy. We're exiting this end bead here. We're going to pick up these 2, and we're going under the second thread bridge. There's 1, there's 2. You're going to go back up the outer bead, or the bead where the last bead you added, I meant to say. You're going to go down the outer bead and then up the other bead on the right. And that completes row 9. So there's the top half of your pumpkin. What we're going to do now is we're going to add our wire guardian. So I've got, this is kind of a dark color. You can use any color wire guardian you have. If you don't have a wire guardian, you can do without it. So what I'm going to do, pull my lever back here. We're going to go ahead and add our earring finding on the end before we go down this direction. So I'm exiting here. I'm going to bring my needle through the wire guardian. Now I'm going to come down through the other side of the wire guardian, making sure my thread goes down through the channel like that. Now I'm going to pick up my wire guard. I like to go ahead and do this in one step because the wire guard has a very small hole, so very small diameter, so it fits my lever back perfectly, so I can do this in one step. So there's my wire guard with my earring finding on. Now I'm going to go down through this Delica bead on the other side, right there. Now you want to reinforce this. I like to do this at least 3 times, so I'm going to come back up my Delica and my wire guard, wire guardian. Now I'm going to come through. Looks like I didn't go through my wire guard, so we'll go through that again. And I'm also going through my earring finding. And sometimes your thread will get caught, so just kind of work around that. Now I'm coming down the wire guardian on this side and down my Delica bead. Make sure your thread goes down that wire guardian. And I'm going to reinforce that one more time. So that's pretty secure. So from here, I'm going to take this thread and weave it down and around a few beads. You don't have to do half hitch knots here, so I'm just going to go through a few beads. And it doesn't matter what direction you choose to go. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So just weave it through a few beads like that. Try and get this untangled. Now I'm going to come up and down. And I think that's pretty secure. So I'm going to clip this off. So now we're going to take our needle and put it on our other half of our thread, and we'll work on the bottom half of this pumpkin. So go ahead and thread your needle and we'll continue. All right, I've got my other half of my thread on my needle. So let's see where we're at. This thread right now is exiting. Fix this here. My thread is exiting on the back side of this bead here. So what I need to do is I need to turn it around. So I want to advance my thread so that it's exiting this direction. So we're just going to come up through here. Pull that snug. Now I'm going to come down this bead here, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to bring my needle up through this bead here, through these 3 beads if you can, like that, because I want my thread coming out in this direction. So there we are all set up for row 10. So for row 10 you need 6 orange, 1 black, and 6 orange. We're going under the second thread bridge. So you're picking up your first 2 beads. We're exiting here. There's our first thread bridge, there's our second. And you want to go back up the last bead you added, reinforce by going down the outer bead, and then back up the inner bead, pull snug, and now you're ready to continue adding the remainder of your beads until we get to the end. Coming down to my last orange bead, going under this last thread bridge, and this will complete row 10. So now we'll go on to row 11. All right, we're getting near the end here. We're going to start row 11, and you'll need 3 orange, 1 black, 1 orange, 1 black, 2 orange, 1 black, 1 orange, 1 black, and 3 orange. So if you lost me there, they'll be on the screen. It's getting a little bit easier here, getting near the end. So we're starting row 11, picking up our first 2 beads, and we're going underneath the very first thread bridge. Right where your thread's exiting, you're going under this thread bridge right here, and you're going to reinforce this just like we've been doing for the first stitch. So we're going back up this bead here, going down the outer bead, and then back up this inner bead. You have to kind of watch it here because you've got your earring finding and it's going to keep getting caught on it, so just kind of be mindful of that. So we're going to be picking up each bead one at a time as we've been doing until we get to the end, going under the very next thread bridge. Alright, we're coming down to our last 2 orange beads here. We're at the last thread bridge, so we're increasing the end here. So we're going under this last thread bridge, coming back up our bead, picking up our last orange, going under the same thread bridge we just went through to increase. And now go back up that last bead, and this completes row 11. Pull that nice and snug. Here we go. So that's row 11. Now we're going to go on to row 12 next. For row 12, you're going to need 3 orange, 7 black, and 3 orange, and we're going to start by going under the second thread bridge. So we're exiting here at the end, picking up our first 2 beads, going under the second thread bridge. Bring your needle back up the last bead you added, pull that, reinforce by going down the outer bead, back up the bead you started. And continue picking the remainder of your beads, going under each thread bridge, and I'll see you at the end. All right, we're coming down to the last bead, coming under the last thread bridge. That completes row 12. We've got just a few more rows to go, and then we'll be done, ready to wrap it up. All right, we're ready to start row 13. For row 13, you'll need 3 orange, 1 black, 1 orange, 2 black, 1 orange, 1 black, and 3 orange. And you're going to start this row by going under the second thread bridge. So we're picking up our first 2 beads, exiting here, going under this second thread bridge. Reinforce and continue, and I'll meet you at the end. I'm coming down to my last orange bead, exiting here, going under the last thread bridge. And that completes row 13. Now we're going on to row 14. You need 11 orange. So we're going to start by going under the second thread bridge, picking up your first 2 beads, exiting here, going under the second thread bridge. Reinforce and continue until you get to the end. All right, I'm coming down to the last orange bead. This is for row 14. We're coming in under the last thread bridge. And this completes row 14. All right, before we start row 15, we need to advance our needle again. So we want to advance to the second bead from the end. So we want to be coming out of this bead here. So I'm just going to come down these 2 beads. Then I'm going to turn around and come back up these 2 beads. So that's where you want your thread coming out of that second bead there. So for row 15, you're going to need 8 orange. And we're going to go under the second thread bridge. So pick up your first 2 beads, exiting here, going under the second thread bridge. So counting from where your thread is coming out, there's 1, there's 2. Come back up your bead you added. Reinforce by coming down the outer and up the inner, and then continue. All right, I'm picking up my last orange bead for row 15, going under this next thread bridge. That completes row 15. Now for row 16, you're going to need a total of 5 orange, and we're going to have to advance our needle again to the second bead from the end. So right now we're exiting here. We want it to be exiting here. So I'm just going to come down this bead here, these next 2 beads, and then come back up so that I'm exiting the next to the last bead. And this is our last row. So I've got 5 orange beads here. I'm picking up my first 2, and I'm going under the second thread bridge. So exiting here, there's 1, there's 2. Reinforce. Picking up our last orange bead, going under this next thread bridge. That completes row 16, and that completes our little pumpkin earring. Isn't he cute? So from here, we're just going to advance our thread through a few beads and cut our thread off. So just weave around just to lock it up. You don't have to do any half-hitch knots because it's pretty tight weave. So just advance your needle through a few beads, go around in circles, and then clip your thread off, and we'll wrap this video up. Alrighty, this concludes today's tutorial. Didn't you have fun making these earrings today? I sure did. Look like happy little pumpkins, don't they? I just wanted to contribute something for Halloween theme. If any of my viewers wanted something like this, I thought, ooh, it's October is coming up, so I'll do a pair of pumpkin earrings. See if you guys like that. Give me a thumbs up if you do like that. And if you'd like more holiday theme type earrings, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for joining me today. I'll have links in the description box below where you can find some of the materials used in today's tutorial. I have a website where I sell my own jewelry. You'll see the link in the details box below. If you're not a subscriber, I hope that you do subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I upload new videos. I want to thank those of you that have subscribed and liked and commented on my videos, and also for sharing my link. I really appreciate you bringing new viewers to my channel. I really appreciate it. I do want to get some feedback from you. I was thinking about doing a tutorial on doing some anklets. So if there's any interest out there on me doing a tutorial on anklets, leave me a comment in this video and I'll cue that up in one of the future tutorials for you. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy beading, and I'll see you next time, and happy Halloween.